I always like to think was like, you get closer with the people that you're working on the projects with, because at the end, you're like, okay, look what we did together. Now we have this, and this is an accomplishment. And so I think it's all those small pieces that built up to something more, and built into having a position where I had the opportunity then to connect the dots and be that catalyzer. And really, with this, it was building the community to come along with that.
Hi, I'm Tracy Lovejoy.
And I'm Shannon Lucas. We are the co-CEOs of Catalyst Constellations, which is dedicated to empowering Catalyst to create bold, powerful change in the world.
This is our podcast, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burnout, where we speak with Catalyst executives about ways to successfully lead transformation in large organizations.
And today we are so excited to have with us Tricia Carey. Welcome, Tricia.
Thank you so much for having me here today. I feel like we're having a nice coffee chat together.
Absolutely, and we're so excited to hear more of your wisdom. For our listeners, as a little bit of background, Tricia is an advocate for innovation and circularity in textiles. She joined Renewcell in November of 2020 to drive commercialization of circulose, fostering circular fashion. Also, she identifies as a circularity catalyzer. She has 2 decades of experience with lensing fibers, where she knows our good friend Krishna, thanks Krishna, where she played pivotal roles in establishing Tencel and expanding global denim markets. She also serves on the boards of Accelerating Circularity and Transformers Foundation. Amazing background, and we'd love to hear in your own words a little bit about your catalytic journey and how you sort of came here today. How did your catalytic nature play out through your career to get you here?
Well, that's such a loaded question. Thank you for that introduction. It's really interesting to see the twists and turns when you take the time to stop and reflect on your career. And I feel that for many years, I was there kind of observing, learning a lot, asking a lot of questions. And then there was the point where I had a role where I took on more responsibility, and then the lens sort of changed. And then it was also more strategic thinking that led me to say, okay, now you're looking at the future, and now you're playing out these scenarios. How do you look at that differently, and how do you position what you're doing? And instead of always having the to-do list, sometimes it's the to-think list, and balancing that out and being able then to take on some of these challenges that you see, some of them around the environment, a lot of them around the social side of connecting the environment together. My love has always been around textiles, and I saw that I was building more and more relationships, and those really propelled me to think differently and to be in new circumstances. So I would say becoming more of this change and being a catalyzer, and then I kind of picked on one area, and that was around circularity, because I worked on some projects while I was at Lensing, while I was there with Krishna, and then had this opportunity to take circularity even further with an innovator. So kind of this contrast between a large global enterprise and what you can do there because you have a lot of the resources, versus a small innovator that moves very quickly and is agile and has its own set of pros and cons. And we can get into a little bit more around that story. But I think both of those stages gave me very different lenses to how I could be that circularity catalyzer, and how I could continue with the relationships that I was building over time. And I think, more than anything, it's not companies who do business together, it's people who do business together, and that's so important.
I'd love to, if you don't mind, double clicking a little bit on your journey, because like starting out as a merchandising manager and like in the business development world, how was the dot connecting or your catalytic nature leading to you leaning into the circularity piece, the sustainability piece?
That's a great question. And as a business development leader, or at that time just a manager, you have the opportunity to work on a lot of projects. And when you're doing projects with customers, then you're kind of you're developing it off of a common goal. And I think those small common goals became a bigger common goal. And that bigger common goal was, how do we reduce the environmental impact of textiles? And this very much became an industry-wide question, which continues today and has only become more complex. And I think the pandemic just, unveiled a lot of the issues within textiles, apparel, supply chain, as well as, the global nature and social issues that exist. So I think from those projects, and I've always enjoyed working on projects together with the customers. Some were in building business, some were in building ideas and concepts to kind of tell more of a story. And with those projects, what I always like to think was like, you get closer with the people that you're working on the projects with, because at the end, you're like, okay, look what we did together. Now we have this, and this is an accomplishment. And so I think it's all those small pieces that built up to something more, and built into having a position where I had the opportunity then to connect the dots and be that catalyzer. And really, with this, it was building the community to come along with that.
I'm hearing some recurring themes, but I'm not going to put words in your mouth. What does being a catalyst mean to you? Like, how do you relate to that concept? And then, how has being a catalyst supported you on that journey to becoming an executive?
Yeah, I think being a catalyzer means to me that you're able to take some of the large challenges that exist and being able to transform them into a new way of working. Right now in the textile industry, it's all around the systemic change and looking at circularity, and systemic change is happening in other industries as well. So I'd really say it's like taking this, being someone who can inspire and lead for that change and looking towards the future.
And I just wanted to pull one thread, excuse the pun, because everything you talked about before seems like there's an activation of people or a connection of people in your experience of being a catalyst.
Very much so. I think, and especially now I've had a couple months of reflecting during a transition that I'm having, of just the importance of the people within your career. And maybe it's just, I kind of always have the blur between what's work and what's really life, because within what we're doing, I never want to feel like it's just, okay, that's my work time. I have many friends from after decades of being in this industry and being in the same industry, you do develop a lot of close friendships. And definitely it's around people. So I'd say one of the first times I came to that realization was actually when I was at Lensing and working on our global denim business. And here I worked on a project to build a blog that was around the denim industry. So not necessarily highlighting how can Lensing sell their fibers into the denim industry, but more around the community of the denim industry, and that Lensing fosters that. Lensing's a part of that. And this blog, it's called Carved in Blue. It's still out there now. That was one way that I saw this community building happening. And then when the pandemic occurred, it just augmented even more, because everybody was looking to connect, and there was that feeling of isolation and loneliness. And then I worked on with the team together. We worked on a series of webinar conversations, because remember those first couple of months in the pandemic, and there was like webinars all the time, because we finally found Zoom and look at each other on camera.
Yep.
And so we did a series of conversations, and I remember one of them that we did was 10 women. And I thought, oh my God, how am I going to moderate panel discussion of 10 women? And it went so well that everybody had their questions, and it was a flow, and very much like this, so it's a conversation of connecting in those ideas. So I'd say that was one time that I really saw the power of a community to catalyze towards a change. And that I could foster this. I could get people around the table together. I could make those connections and say, you could be working with this person. I mean, some of it's very basic, but it's important to do. And that, I would say, was one of the instances where I noticed that catalyzing and bringing communities together is vital.
Sounds like a superpower. You We'd love to hear generally challenges you've experienced as a Catalyst executive, but I would love to start that area with a follow-up to your definition of catalyzer. You said to take large challenges and transform it into new ways of working. Like, this is why change management exists, why, organizational development exists, to be able to get people to change, right? Coming up with the idea is one thing. So how have you done that, Tricia? Like, how do you overcome that challenge of resistance to new ways of working?
Yes, people do resist change. Why is that? Why do we want to be stuck in yet we want to go on vacation, right? We want to do other things that will change us. So, but there's something about it that people want to stay stuck in the way that they were working. I think there's different ways of approaching it. I think, first of all, you have to know your audience, right? You have to know who you're talking to in order to be able to kind of have that perspective of how you're going to present things.
Yeah.
And then another big part of it, which I know comes up quite a bit, is knowing their purpose, knowing their why. Why are they there? Whether it's your team that you're trying to change, or whether it's larger within your organization or even bigger within your industry, you have to understand their why. Are they doing it because they personally feel a connection and a passion? Are they doing it because their company has a strategic goal and they have to meet that as a part of their deliverables? And so definitely started to see some of these patterns within organizations of how to connect with people. So first, it's knowing like who you're talking to, at what level of the organization, where are they coming from? Are they a numbers person? This we have a lot within the textile industry. Are they designer oriented? Because then they need visual.
Mm.
Are they a numbers person? Because then you're going to pull in your statistics and have that. Are they just a process person? Are they more at an operational level? And how is it going to impact them?
What can you think of an example in your career of what that really looks like? Right? If you're trying to get an organization to transform, and I love the specific examples of, how roles will have a different value, but how is Tricia getting smart on what that value is?
Yeah. Well, I would say, most recently with my experiences at Renewcell, which is a textile to textile recycler based in Sweden. They recently came out of a bankruptcy and now have a new company name of Circulose. And that was huge to shift the mindset of many of the brands on how they were going to change and address circularity. What I learned from that was definitely within the organizations, understanding who's the decision maker, who's your champion, and who's your Sherpa. Who's your person who's always going to help you, guide you within an organization. So that's kind of from an outside going into another company. I guess I hadn't always looked at it that way, but understanding how you're going to bring about change. How are you even going to work together within a project?
Mm-hmm.
And when you can identify the roles of those people, and it's not always by their title, it's by who they are. And that goes back to that we don't work with companies. It's not one company working with another company. It's how the people within those organizations are working together.
Back to your superpower, Shannon pulling that thread. We're cracking ourselves up with that metaphor. All right. Are there other challenges that you want to share with us that you've experienced as a executive catalyst?
I think another challenge that you have is kind of also building your own persona in a way, as you go from one role to another role. So in going from working within a large global enterprise into an innovator, how that shifts, and it's, how you also have to handle it within your own ways, how you are with your peers, and also external stakeholders.
I have a similar question to before of like, what does that really look like? And I have a connected. Does it ever change? Does the persona ever change while you're within a single role? Or do you find that it's Like, I understand this role and what my key, expectations are. And so it's kind of static.
No, I think it's always changing, and I think it's always evolving. And definitely within a smaller organization, you have to wear many hats, and you do have to take on different roles. And you also have to continue to think about the future and play through those scenarios.
And so what is the actual work, the steps to build your own persona?
Well, I think you have to take some time to sit back and reflect on how things are, right? And maybe at times as leaders, we don't always give ourselves that space to sort of reflect and see how we're coming across, making sure that the message is being heard, right? Because the engagement and the buy-in from your team, from the organization, even if you're working externally with other companies, is so important. And how you can make sure that you have that and it's crystal clear, that's essential for change management to happen. And of course, it can't always be that I'm projecting that on someone else. It has to be that it's coming, that they see that realization as well. So having this way of understanding, again, who's your audience, how do you need to connect with them, and having that opportunity really to make sure that they're on board
Yeah.
with and that engagement. Because when you can inspire that within someone and they have their own conviction, they can go out and be that catalyzer too, right? And
Right.
that's how it needs to continue to develop.
You're so often in these conversations, we have guests like you are for me right now that give us ahas. And in, I just drew a little visual of, we have to have the vision as the catalyst. What are we working on? And then the beautiful, superpower that you're bringing up, know your audience, do the translation. And then in between that, who do I need to be to help bridge between these two? Is something that we very rarely think about. And it's certainly something I've worked on one-on-one in coaching, but I don't think Shannon and I have ever explicitly talked about in class. We don't touch on it in the book. And that's just such an interesting separate reflection of, do I need to be the chief inspirer? Do I need to be the Secretary of State because there's different factions, right? Like, what's happening here that I'm going to help move between those? So thank you.
I have a follow-up question to that, because it's so fascinating. It's such a great reflection for us. Part of what I heard is, as you're talking about like where the vision is and the people that you need to bring along. I don't know that maybe you used the word trust. I didn't write it down explicitly, but that's the trust and the credibility is sort of what you're talking to, is like, I'm going to show up in a way that's both authentic, because they have to get there themselves. So all the data points have to align to that. But there's this interesting conundrum that we often have as catalysts, which is we almost never have done the thing that we're doing before. I mean, at some point, it's this net new thing. And I'm wondering if you can speak to, like, we talk a lot about having imposter syndrome as catalysts because we've stepped into these roles. And yet you need to inspire confidence with people internally and externally that you have enough of a clue that they can trust you to go on that journey towards that vision. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. The trust that people have to have in you, because you're pioneering into new space.
That's right.
It's the rocket ship to another planet. And I would say in the case of some of the experiences that I've had in trying to lead this transformation, I would say into textile to textile circularity would be one example. That you do have to say, okay, well, based on these facts, and again, depending on who you're speaking with, if it's a finance person, they're going to want to see those numbers, but I think most of all, if you can inspire that emotion within people to want to be behind that whole mission and vision around, say, circularity. And here you can give examples of small projects that might have been very successful that either I was involved in or other people were involved in, bringing other case studies of what's happened in the past. People always look at history as a signal for the future.
Nice.
In some cases, we're working on new challenges within society, like circularity, that have just been done at such small ways in the past that it's huge to tackle, probably much larger than any of us even think. I mean, we all address, okay, there's recycling. That's one element of circularity, but putting your cans, paper, plastic in recycling them, you think, okay, well, we've done that, and we didn't always do that. When I grew up, we didn't have two different trash bins in our kitchen. It was, you just throw everything away, and away is away. We came to this realization, right? And that needed to change. That's taken time. Okay, that's only one small piece. We have so much further to go, right? We haven't even gotten out into outer space yet on this. So I think there's the trust element, there's looking at history, there's looking at that sense of confidence that you have, and there's a humility to saying, I don't have all the answers, but if we can try to put our heads together, maybe we can all come up with a way if I can get it going here. And I think it's just so important to have strong teams in order to do that.
I love that you landed there, because that's what I had wrote down about like one of my personal learnings when I stepped into each new bigger role. Because like there's this pressure, like you're supposed to have all the answers, and having the quiet confidence to be able to say or recognize for yourself, I don't need to have all the answers, but I need to have a great team and I need to set them up for success. Yeah. So sort of building on that, because it's super connected, as we go along in our career, we often get called being a disruptor or being a troublemaker. We might embrace it and we'd be like, I'm a positive disruptor, but often the moniker is not given with that sort of intent. And so I'm just wondering if you have advice for like, how do you get into the upper echelons of being a Catalyst executive when that's often the trajectory that we start off in our career?
Yeah. I don't know if I ever set off to be, a catalyst for change. I always think I wanted to get things done. Just as your title is, you just want to get shit done and move forward. And then it kind of evolved into, well, if no one else is doing that, then I want to do that, and I want to take that on, right? And it's building on the confidence that you have after each experience. So I think for people, there's those that probably want to take on that chance too, because it's not just leading. Leading is one thing, but it's also having this vision behind what you're doing, and that consistency is key in anything. And that's where I say, it's like building on the relationships that also support you in getting work done. So I think for other executives to kind of take on those moments, take the chance to stop and reflect on it. Look at the people who are around you that help you do what you want to do, right? When you have like-minded people, we've all seen this, when we've had great teams, it's 1 and 1, equal 4. It's so powerful. And I think a lot of times we do this, we reflect on the good old days, right? Oh, wasn't it great when I worked there? But when you sat in that position, did you feel like it was your best self? And I guess I've had some of those moments where I've definitely had amazing colleagues, incredible bosses who also fostered my growth. And for that, I truly appreciate, and still glad that I had those opportunities along the way. But you might not always set out to be a catalyst, but I think in many ways it can just happen through those experiences and who you're around.
I love this common theme that's coming out, I think, in every answer. You're so keyed into having situational awareness, like that deep sensing capability that, when science catches up, neuroscience catches up with what a catalyst brain looks like that's just built into how you're operating. And then you're connecting that, going back to the people, right? It's like, how do I find mentors? How do I find people who are like-minded, who can support me on the way to be my best catalyst self? And also, and I think this is true for a lot of catalysts, we very rarely go, I want to be the chief sustainability officer. Like, I want to solve that problem. How do I solve that problem? I need to become the chief sustainability officer. So thank you for your wisdom on that. Tricia?
As we wrap up today, Tricia, our fun question. We would love to hear about your favorite catalyst, past or present, who inspires you, and why do they stand out for you?
So hard to pick one, because they're that people are so important. There's been many of them. I think if I look at one within the industry who I've always admired, Diane von Fostenberg, not just because she's a famous designer, but as a female, she's overcome so many challenges. She lost her company, she took it back, faces challenges. She brings in a new leader who's younger, and she's very open and honest and talking about, she's in the autumn of her life and what she wants to give back. So I don't know. I mean, I've had several opportunities here in New York to meet her at different functions.
What?
And it's always wonderful to hear her talk. But I think, that's someone who's gone through quite an interesting journey. But I think there's so many within the textile and apparel space. Certainly my former colleague, Krishna, I mean, he's an amazing catalyzer, one that's so authentic and true. And there's a couple of others within organizations, Carla Magruder, who's done so much within circularity. She leads the nonprofit that I'm involved in, Accelerating Circularity. There's also Andrew Ola, who leads Transformers Foundation, who also looks at how the denim industry has such an important role to play. And I just love his thought leadership, what he does behind his organization of Transformers. So those are some. I mean, there's so many, and it's kind of taking bits and pieces of all those catalyzers to try to see, how can I be my best self and how can I bring most impact into what I do.
Well, definitely the theme for this conversation is, back to your superpower of seeing the people and the importance of people in it. So it's not at all surprising to me that not only do you have multiple catalysts, but that you are celebrating people who've been really impactful in your own life and not just you're kind of in the distance. So that was such a lovely way to kind of bring that full circle. Tricia, thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
It's been so lovely to have this time with you, to get to know you, and wishing you so much luck on this next phase as you first take some time and then figure out the big challenges you're going to go solve in the world.
Great. Thank you so much for this conversation. I really enjoy your podcasts and all the work that you're doing and your publications. So keep going strong. It's important.
We will. We promise.
Thank
and
you.
Thank you for that. It literally gave me goosebumps. And thank you so much to those of you listening. If you'd like to learn more about how to create bold, powerful change in the world, be sure to check out our book, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out, or go to our website at catalystconstellations.com.
If you enjoyed this episode as much as we did, please take 10 seconds to rate it on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you have other catalysts in your life, hit the share button and send a link their way. Thanks again.